The first thing to know that might be different from your previous peer review experiences is that as readers, I do not want you to correct the grammar or the spelling of the papers you're looking at. For one thing, it'll make it much faster to read. And for another thing, research shows that when students try to correct each other's grammar and spelling, sometimes they end up making different errors or compounding the problem. And also, the author doesn't learn how to correct their own errors, which is something that all of us need to learn. So if you find there are mistakes in the writing, you can say that there are some errors, and later on, if there are enough, at the end of the paper, you might mention any patterns to the errors that you see. But it's up to the writer to then get some help. They can go to the writing center, or they can sit with a trusted friend. There's lots of ways that they can correct those errors. So, red circle on the errors. The other thing to know as readers is that you are not this mean old judge in the corner, and neither are you the sweet, kind, understanding best friend, right? So don't be hypercritical, don't be sarcastic, don't be, quote, mean, and don't be, quote, nice. Just be a reader. So be descriptive, use your I statements. In other words, I'm confused here. I wonder what's happening there. I need more context in this area. I'm really persuaded by your argument here. Those are the kinds of statements that writers like to hear because we write for readers and we need to know how our words are affecting you. So that's what I would like you to respond as, not as someone who's correcting and not as someone who's judging. And certainly not as someone who says it's perfect, don't change a thing. So we're going to cross those out. What should you do as readers? Well, as I said, you're going to respond as you are, as who you are as a reader. And you're going to identify a few places in the paper that cause specific reactions for you. And probably these places will just pop up as you read. You won't even have to decide, oh, I need to put a comment somewhere. You'll just notice something. So the first bullet is things that cause you confusion. So you're going to point out, I'm confused here because I thought you said this, but now you're saying that. Or I don't understand this point. It makes me think maybe you mean this, question mark. So anything that's confusing to you, you could flag that. You can also flag the good things, a comment, and tell the writer where you're persuaded, where you think they're making a good point, where they've used really good evidence or a good language. You can flag places where you're bored or distracted as a writer. So if they're going off on a tangent, if they're using overly long quotes, if their paragraph is a full page, and as a reader, you're having a hard time paying attention and you find yourself having to reread a section over and over, that's a great place to put a comment and say, I had to read this section 3 times because I kept losing my train of thought. So that's really great for a writer to know. Maybe I need to go back in there and put some paragraphing or take out some language. And the last thing I'm going to suggest is that you could comment on places where you want more from the writer. For example, they've inserted a quote, but they haven't discussed the quote or used the quote. It's just dropped in there. That would be a good place to ask them, why did you use this quote? Or what does it show? What do you want to say here? Okay, so those are the 4 areas that I'd like you to think about as you read. Where are you confused? Where are you persuaded or impressed? Where do you get bored or distracted? And where do you want more? And there you are, the reader, thinking about the person's writing. I know, it's hokey. As readers, Another thing you'll do after you make those comments along the way is put a little short paragraph at the end to do two things. The first is just to sum up in a positive way what you think the author's trying to do there. Do they make a particular point that resonated with you? Put a sentence about what that is. And then, is there any sort of difficulty you had that went across an individual comment? So, for example, were there organizational issues like paragraphs that didn't seem to belong? Did it seem to be missing an introduction, or maybe it had too much of an introduction? Did it seem like the conclusion was too short or dropped off quickly? Anything at the end of the paper is that you noticed any patterns that you didn't mention in an individual comment is a good place to put it here. The second idea that you might look for is, did you notice the writer had any problems with the types of sources they used? Was there an obvious source that is absent from this paper that you think could really help? Does the writer tend to overquote? A lot of students do this. I do this myself. I have to catch myself. Are there lots and lots of quotes sprinkled throughout, but not enough of the author's voice? Or the opposite. Could it use a few quotes to punch up a point or give a specific example? And the last thing you might look at overall is, do you see any problems with their logic? Do they contradict themselves? Sometimes we're not even aware of that, and that's where a reader can be really helpful. And finally, remember that you're going to be descriptive to the writer and not punitive in terms of not trying to be that judge, jury, and executioner. Just be a reader who's describing.